I think AI is extremely powerful and useful when it comes to content marketing. What it can't do quite yet is the relationship part. And so the more we can share of our personality and our passion, in addition to our expertise and experience, that's something AI can't really replicate right now.
Today's guest is Vikram Rajan, co-founder of PhoneBlogger.net and VideoSocials. A marketing expert and speaker for top organizations like the AICPA and New York Bar Association, Vikram is also the author of 365 Marketing Thumb Rules. With his expertise in digital marketing and content creation, Vikram is revolutionizing how brands connect with audiences.
You realize you've got something with PhoneBlogger.net, and then how did that grow into the next piece of VideoSocials.net?
VideoSocials really emerged out of a need to get our clients out of their own way again in terms of video content creation, but also to help one another, because for us, that became really paramount to build that community.
People find marketing and social media overwhelming, so I'm curious sort of how you've set up your framework to drive to an ideal outcome for them.
Yeah, we like to keep it short and simple. It doesn't have to be very complicated and shouldn't be too sophisticated in the beginning. What's really important in terms of kind of bringing out your own narrative and really connecting it with your potential clients who are the audience is making sure you're answering their frequently asked questions.
How do you see, your business either transforming or really looking at content creation, integration of AI in maybe a different way?
I guess there's two ways, Jenna.
Welcome back to another episode of Built for This, Stories of a Maverick, the show where we dive into innovation, grit, and leadership at the crossroads of creativity and technology. Today's guest is Vikram Rajan, a co-founder of Practice Marketing and the creative force behind platforms like PhoneBlogger.net and VideoSocials.net. From launching social media engines that amplify storytelling to building marketing strategies for emerging brands, he has made growth look equal parts both strategic and artful. In our conversation, we're going to explore how he navigates digital storytelling, balances creativity with structure, and what it really takes to build tools that empower others to share their voice. So whether you're a founder, marketer, or creative, this one's for you. So let's get in. Welcome.
Thanks, Jenna. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, I always like to kind of start off by learning a little bit more that's kind of not work related, a little bit about kind of how you grew up and sort of what kind of maybe started the pathway to the role and the world that you're in now.
So I grew up out on Long Island, suburbs of New York City, where I live now in Harlem here in Manhattan. And I grew up being a computer geek. Nowadays is kind of cool, but back then was not cool. And that led me all through elementary school, being like the only person in the computer room, me and my best friend Ben, and then junior high school likewise. And in high school, Ben and I were we opened up the computers for the first time in the high school library. And we were one of the first high schools, I think the first high school out of Long Island, to have the internet as part of Hofstra University. And that really gave me access to the world of chat rooms. This is before the world that we have now in terms of Facebook. This was all dial-up modems back in their mid-90s, and the world of bulletin board systems or BBSs and stuff like that, that maybe some viewers and listeners remember. And then in college, I tried to escape that world a little bit. I got pulled back in. From the beginning, I wanted to kind of be part of the real world, like normal kids. But I was really always interested in my senior year of high school and then in college in writing, creative writing, spoken word, poetry. Ended up in college starting a creative writing magazine at SUNY Albany, State University of New York at Albany. And I guess now my world of publishing others, let alone being my own creative expressions, along with technology, I can kind of see how all that has led to basically what we do now as a content marketing firm.
I love it. And then in terms of, as you were kind of obviously, I would say probably curiosity was on the forefront, as I think kind of when I think of like somebody who's really into computers or tech, trying to like take things apart, understand how they work, or, how different pieces come together. Did you always kind of have the thought that, hey, I'm going to go do this for myself? Or you were around, a family that kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit, so that was a little kind of already in the path? Or was it a total 180 from maybe what you grew up being either maybe like pressured to go do, or just different path than kind of what you were used to?
I don't think technology necessarily. I was not really a technologist. My closest friend growing up, he was more the tech person of kind of literally putting computers together and coding and things of that nature. And I was more of the idea guy, kind of still am. Around the senior year of college is when my father took an early retirement from his job. He all my life worked for the phone company, from New York Telephone, AT&T, New York Telephone, and then eventually turned into 9X. And Bell Atlantic took over 9X. Again, this is late 90s, which turned into Verizon. And, at the time, I was like, oh, my dad's retiring. He's an old guy. And, I come to now realize he was like in his early 50s, which is not old
No.
anymore, not for me at all. Then going and becoming a management consultant for smaller companies. And I was very much into political organizing at the time in my later years of college. And, that's all about relationship building and community building. And with my dad, I said, look, well, here's an opportunity for me to work alongside him and essentially introduced him to people that would bring him into clients. So essentially, my world ended up being out in the business community of Long Island, introducing my father to lawyers and accountants and financial advisors who work with small business owners who could bring my father in as a management consultant. And those initial colleagues turned into family friends. They knew me, they knew my dad, and I was, fresh out of college at the time in my early 20s. And along the way, they were seeing the kind of marketing help I was doing for my father. And so they became some of my initial clients, and kind of learning the ropes of kind of how does a law firm market itself and what is really needed for word of mouth referrals. And, back from my technology and to work where, along with being a marketing consultant and developing marketing action plans under the tutelage of my father, I started realizing that there's this whole world of blogs and social media that was emerging at that time. Again, this was, about 20 years ago at this point. So it's just starting into the world of blogging. And none of my clients were able to get out of their own way to sit down and write their articles themselves. And so I said, hey, what if we interviewed our clients over the phone and turned what they said into articles? And that's how Phone Blogger got started with my current business partner, Mark Bullock. He and I kind of came up with that idea together. He became my partner really as a marketing consultant. I was too busy just for my own clients. I needed help. And he has also an even stronger technology background than I do, even in the professional world as a technologist. And so his background and mine kind of meld together relatively well. And so that world of Phone Blogger got started. It wasn't a complete departure of entrepreneurship, but I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family. It was much more knowing that I wanted to work for myself and earn my own living and not have to answer to anyone else. Lo and behold, as a small business owner, instead of answering to one boss, we answer to dozens of bosses as our clients, which is okay. I suppose that's a little bit better than just one, but it gives me that time flexibility that I've cherished along the way.
Yeah, and I'm curious, working with your dad, what was that like? I can imagine there could be a lot of fun, but there could also be a lot of tension just because of a parent-child dynamic. And sort of, what did you kind of learn from that experience? Maybe, was it, okay, this is what I'm looking for in a partner that I want to grow a business with? Or kind of how did that change your perception? Or maybe kind of the biggest takeaway from sort of kind of starting in that direction?
My father is extremely insightful when it comes to management science and how larger organizations grow. And so every aspect of kind of management consultant and even managerial prowess really comes from him. So that has been a very strong foundation. It did get frustrating because I was second fiddle. And I had my own vision, for better or for worse. I was younger, and so I had my own crazy ideas, and I couldn't implement all of it. It was helpful to have Mark, who was a little bit older than I am. He's in his mid-50s, I would say late 50s at this point. I don't know exactly. But, even now, I had to sell my idea basically to him because I consider him an equal partner. And so, I can come up with my crazy ideas, but if I can't convince him, how am I going to convince others? And, he has a very vested interest in seeing it work. And so I don't mind having to kind of sell my idea to an intro partner, but it did get a little frustrating, kind of the father-son relationship. He's practically retired now down in Florida. From a business standpoint, it was a good foundation that I was able to springboard off of.
You realize you've got something kind of with phoneblogger.net. And then how did that kind of grow, or what changed to kind of morph it into the next sort of piece of VideoSocials.net?
It happened a year before COVID. And it was right at the time Facebook had already modified their algorithm to prioritize videos in their algorithm. And that didn't affect our clients all that well, dealing with a professional set. A year later, on 2018, 2019, LinkedIn followed suit and started prioritizing videos in their algorithm. And that's really when the writing was on the wall, figuratively and also literally the feed. And that's really when we started telling our clients, look, we got to get you on video, either go to a videographer or you got to, work with some kind of video studio, because back then these kinds of remote recording really wasn't available. And that's when I turned to Mark again. I said, hey, look, here's another crazy idea. There's this thing called Zoom that no one really's heard of. A lot of our clients already know each other through bar associations and CPA societies and networking groups. What if we brought some of our clients together on this thing called Zoom, and kind of like a networking group, kind of like a mastermind, we can kind of create what we now call a video blogging club, where instead of kind of sharing an elevator pitch, our clients or members of VideoSocials can answer a frequently asked question or talk about a topic, much like they do at Phone Blogger, but now, of course, on video. And we basically go around the room in 2 to 3 minute segments. Each person records their video blog for the week, as it were. So it's a different topic each week. But that also gives our clients an opportunity to become kind of like a peer group and give each other ideas and ask each other questions. And so VideoSocials really emerged out of a need to get our clients out of their own way again in terms of video content creation, but also to help one another, because for us, content is a means to an end for not only word of mouth referrals transactionally, but relationships in general. And so for us, that became really paramount to kind of build that community. And so VideoSocials is video blogging together, fun and done.
Yeah. And so with that kind of, specialization in terms of kind of that legal field and industry, what were kind of some of the challenge and sort of, pivots you need to make as you're sort of pulling these different things together, and marketing is always changing, like you mentioned, from algorithms and which platform is going to change what. And, what are kind of the breakthroughs that you started to see? Because generally speaking, I feel like most people have, almost a non-marketing mindset when you kind of think about that industry in terms of sort of community building, but also getting their message out.
Practical sense, attorneys and accountants to some degree, financial advisors especially, they all have compliance obligations, words that they can't say, must say, or turn of phrase that they have to use. So not only do they have to be careful in that regard, but we needed to create technology to add those disclaimers. It was kind of part of the reason why we created Brander, which is kind of part two of VideoSocials, which is our automation software that, nowadays it does a lot of bells and whistles of adding captions and turning a transcription to a blog post and automatically posting onto YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn. But in the very beginning, it was really, well, we needed to add an end screen with our members' contact information and those disclaimers, those compliance disclaimers that our clients need to show on their videos or any content. So that was a very practical aspect. But a more communal aspect was very much like what you mentioned, Jenna, that they don't necessarily always have a marketing mindset. And that's okay, because they do have passion to help their clients, and they do have expertise to drive that passion. And the more our members can play the role of an educator, the better it is for everyone. That we don't really want the videos to be sales pitches or elevator pitches. That's not really the perspective. Now, in longer form video, like the video podcast that we run for our clients, we can put in marketing mechanisms like an ad break and calls to action. And those things are necessary. I agree. And even and the end screen can have a call to action, because dressing people up, you want to have them go somewhere once they're all dressed up. And so those calls to action are necessary, but substantively content rich oriented really should be based on our clients' own expertise. And so the fact that they're naturally educators and naturally passionate and have that expertise and the experience of working with their clients, that I feel is even more powerful than any of the technology mechanisms that we put in place. That's kind of the easy part. The hard part is really what our clients do relatively naturally, which is to help others.
Yeah. And I'm always curious about, especially I always find when people are sort of in that kind of educator, although they might not classify themselves as that, and on the side of supporting people in whatever avenue that is, sometimes it's this interesting process of sort of finding your voice and kind of confidence along the way to really deliver that. And I'm curious, for you, kind of, helping to support putting the foundational pieces, that, the execution side of it, but then also bringing them into this community and allowing them to share but produce content. I would love to kind of hear how you've seen kind of somebody find their voice along that way of like, oh yeah, I'm not sure that's me. Like I kind of know I need to do it, but there's that difference between sort of client facing versus sort of that outward facing style. And I find that some people, not that it's imposter syndrome, but it's a little bit of like, I don't know. And I would love to kind of understand sort of how you navigate that with clients and then what you've seen with the people that you work with from that side.
Yeah, one of the first things we do with our members, I do one-on-one with new members, and then, member driven after that, is to start brainstorming what are the right blog topics for them to start out with at Video Socials and eventually podcast topics. But with Video Socials and just the video blogging, we have a resource, we have a tool called Blog Brainstormer. It's a very simple Google Doc. Viewers and listeners can download it for themselves. They can go to videosocials.net/topics, and they can definitely use it on their own. It's something I literally use with our members week in, week out. I use it myself. And the first page are what I always called prompts, and now it's kind of trendy language of the world of AI to call them prompts.
Yeah.
And the whole point of it was to prompt them to brainstorm these blog topics. They're never going to be wrong in terms of should they start with a frequently asked question or a client success story or something personal. Again, that's their own personal aspect of it. Eventually, they'll end up with a content calendar and kind of top down of kind of thinking of every season or quarter and kind of what that theme should be, what are the topics, and then what are the titles. But in the beginning, I always say, hey, look, you're not going to mess up. Go out and actually start recording topics, and then you can sophisticate it with a content calendar. I think, unfortunately, it's a very easy crutch of procrastination to wait for a perfect time to get started, let alone a perfect time to start a content calendar. And that becomes a lot of armchair entrepreneurship and entrepreneur type stuff when, look, just jump into the pool. You're not going to drown in this kind of video pool, especially the fact that just because you record a video doesn't mean you have to publish it publicly. So you can kind of get the butterflies out and kind of get going and then find your voice. In fact, we have one of our members, Lynn, who mentioned in one of the videos, I'll kind of back up. At the end of every Video Social sessions, we always ask either newer members or guests for feedback of what did you enjoy about today's Video Socials? Is there a takeaway that you can implement? And we like to record that. We actually have that on YouTube. And so anyone watching, listening can kind of watch and hear members and really their journey. They go to videosocials.net/community. And that just goes, it's a redirect to a YouTube channel since that's easier to remember than the YouTube URL. And so there are dozens of videos kind of talking about their own personal journey, obviously in their own words. And one of them, Lynn, mentioned that basically enabled him not only to find his voice, but also kind of find the right messaging. I think that may have been a different member who talked about kind of finding the right messaging for his service even before going to market. And so just getting yourself out there and starting to talk to others and having to explain to those who may not understand what you do becomes even more important than trying to hone a hook or an elevator pitch or even a call to action. So yeah, I can share more if you'd like.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, I kind of wanted to sort of, from the framework, I guess I was kind of curious sort of how you kind of blend, the narrative instincts with the marketing frameworks and sort of maybe, like examples of like campaigns or how you work in terms of like scaling those and what that actually like looks like. Because I imagine especially sometimes people hear about that now and already it seems overwhelming and people find marketing and social media overwhelming and they're like, oh my goodness, now I got to do all this talking. Now I got to do all this. So I'm curious sort of how you've set up your framework to kind of build on that and scale so that it is consistent, but also to drive to an ideal outcome for them.
Yeah, we like to keep it short and simple. That it doesn't have to be very complicated and shouldn't be too sophisticated in the beginning. I appreciate that question. In terms of the framework, in fact, you can see it in the blog Brainstormer. They're purposeful, like 4 or 5 sections that kind of walks people through that in the beginning. What's really important in terms of kind of bringing out your own narrative and really connecting it with your potential clients who are the audience is making sure you're answering their frequently asked questions. Sometimes we forget what those frequently asked questions are, ironically, because they are so frequent. We're like kind of swimming in it. And so you can't always do it in the vacuum of that 10-20 minute brainstorming session. So I say, hey, look, to keep a running tag, because within a week or two, you will come across those frequently asked questions, literally by nature, they're frequently asked. But then there are those rarely asked questions or what people should be asking you, but they never really do, or they're too afraid to ask. And so that blog brainstorming tool goes into a couple of different sections where the most engaging posts tend to be kind of the two bookends of the blog brainstormer. The first section is the timely topics. The more timely the topic is, it gets engagement because it's urgency. And for better or for worse, we're always kind of dealing with the upcoming deadline of whatever that is, be it a client deadline or tax deadline or something of that nature. And that's just the nature of it. The last section of the blog brainstormer are the personal posts, and really peeling back the onion layers of who we are, kind of like some of your questions of what drives us, what motivates us, how did our childhood impact, what do we do, kind of give us a day in the life of or the week in the life of, kind of bring us into your process. And so long as we can kind of connect it to why that's helpful for a client to understand, which usually means it usually shows our passion and why we're into this for all the right reasons. While we have to make a living and money is important, there's usually a driving force of why we're doing this for money. And for me, it's my own passion of kind of helping others really express themselves and relate to others. And because of that, because they're relating to others, it inevitably becomes an even more powerful form of marketing than just a sales pitch.
And I'm curious, once you start to look at that, how do you, from like a leadership and culture perspective, especially in a world, that especially in this AI is very much like disrupting the space of able to speed, mass production. How do you kind of look at connecting, creating collaboration between sort of different peoples from both sort of that creative and like technology perspective?
Yeah, I think AI is extremely powerful and useful when it comes to content marketing. That literally between using the blog brainstormer as prompts and ChatGPT can literally build upon those prompts and build upon your LinkedIn profile and immediately, send you a bunch of titles and topics, and that's easy. In terms of answering questions, nowadays when you do Google search, they have AI on for better or for worse, essentially summarizing what other websites are showing us, and that content creation or content generation from a ChatGPT perspective, I think is extremely powerful and only going to grow even more powerful. What it can't do quite yet, and I wonder if it ever will, is the relationship part. And so for us, the content again is a means to an end that it's not really content marketing, it's relationship marketing. And so the more we can share of our personality and our passion, in addition to expertise and experience, that's something AI can't really replicate right now because we're not working with a bot ultimately, we're working with an actual human. Now that might change in coming years. And then also what will end up changing in coming years will be how can AI literally kind of scour our own clearinghouse and compendium of work and kind of mimic our personality. And that's, sounds very scary and sci-fi-ish, but those kind of, GPT versions of ourselves, those avatars that inevitably will come, may be useful in terms of efficiency. But in terms of real human connection, I think technology can serve in a lot of ways. Case in point of what we're doing here, we're kind of remote recording, which I think is powerful. But still, it's a human connection, right? We're seeing each other. Now, I wonder, 10 years from now, even, which is a relatively short amount of time, will, it be Jenna the avatar and Vikram the avatar, and two avatars are having a conversation. And even now, Google can replicate that to some extent in terms of faking it. But that's literally what it is, right? It is fake, and that can serve a purpose in terms of creating content for content's sake, and it can help from an SEO standpoint and an efficiency standpoint. But when we are building businesses built on authenticity and human connection, businesses can be created in other ways. So it's not as if this is necessarily better, but I prefer human connection and authenticity. Doesn't mean it's the only way. But for those of us who crave that and where our passion and personality, experience, and expertise is important, well, this kind of stuff is really, I think, important. And technology aids us all the time. AI can help tremendously in summarizing and creating content in that way, and maybe even creating YouTube thumbnails and creating other imagery that way. So AI can help tremendously, and we rely upon it a lot at our company. But it's still the human connection, I think, is more important.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've had a lot of conversations about the era when we all have our digital twins and like, what would you give to your digital twin? And then what would you want to take back? And I think there's just going to be this interesting balance of where that fight of, no, I want real interaction. Okay, I'm done with like the robot fake version of me and I just want to, talk to the real you, and like, how do you verify? And then do we all have chips? And then the real person scans their chip, It's so interesting
Smarter people than me will figure that out. I mean, I remember even just having to switch to Calendly as a calendaring scheduling system, and even now I feel awkward because it seems very pretentious and highfalutin. Like, I don't have time to send you available times. Just pick it in my calendar. And so I phrase it like, pick a good time for you in my calendar. My calendar's open to you. So I try to couch it in it's a you way. It's built for you, as opposed to like, oh, I don't have time for you, plebeian. Nowadays, it's become more and more acceptable and normalized to use tools like Calendly, and that's a technology tool. And I can imagine, Calendly using a video avatar of ourselves and kind of having a fake conversation of, hey, would Tuesday at noon or Thursday at 3 be better? And there can be a video version of me that would dynamically create that, and that'll be kind of maybe interesting because the person knows that it's fake and they know, but it's a more interesting way than having to scour constantly between the two, my calendar and your calendar. So I think those things are okay. Same kind of thing like automated webinars. When you know it's automated, that's okay. Like, all right, good. I want to watch it on my own time. I want to watch it at 3 a.m. and I don't expect you to be available at 3 a.m. And that's okay. I think it's when it's fake and it's pretending to be real. I think that's when it's inauthentic, because then it's like, all right, then now you're tricking me, and that's not a good place to begin a relationship.
For sure. And then it'll be interesting, I think, too, from like a price point barrier too. If it's like, this is the automated, like, digital twin version, you get in at this price point versus if we are, in person, it'll be interesting how those models get kind of like built. And I'm just curious, from your experiences of like building businesses, building teams, working with clients, I always love to kind of hear sort of the trials and tribulations along the way. Maybe, some of your biggest learnings or pivots slash like, that was totally a big mistake and now we got to kind of do that, and just like your view on kind of sort of staying nimble in a world that changes all the time, and sort of how you kind of have navigated some of those journeys.
Our clients are busy, and recognizing that, not that it's a challenge, but we always have to remind ourselves that we are part of their life, part of their business growth, but we're not everything to them. And as a community, and as working with members, they become friends, and they become, more than colleagues. They're referral relationships, but they become authentic friends where they're hanging out outside of video socials. And that's really cool for us to hear about. But that doesn't necessarily mean they want to communicate with us or communicate with each other all the time. And so always kind of looking at how can we make engagement still productive, and that, yes, socials is very much a play on words. Yes, it's social media, but it is a fun atmosphere. That's why it's video socials, like an ice cream social. And so from that perspective, we want it to be fun and convenient, but it still should be tied to something productive towards their business growth, or else then we're just a social and it's not business productive. So that's been a challenge of kind of how do we find that happy medium where we don't want just a networking get together gathering. I'm like, I've got enough friends. I don't need to just, pay something to be a friend. So that's one aspect of it. And we're always kind of exploring that. I don't think we've figured it out yet, but, we're exploring that more and more of how do we make this community more useful, but less time intense. The other aspect of Video Socials is our VIP program, which for us stands for Video Interview Podcasts. Of course, our clients are our VIP. They're interviewing their VIP, so it's wonderfully, pun intended. And in the beginning, because as you know, marketing is all about consistency and frequency, we started saying, great, let's do weekly episodes. While some of our clients can keep up with a weekly recording schedule, vast majority of our clients are just way too busy, or they've got other things going on where it's just not their primary focus to do 4 episodes every month, weekly recording schedule. And so I would say like any other 80-20 rule, 20% are great at the video recording weekly, but 80% can't do it for a variety of reasons. And, some of it, they're just not interested in doing weekly recordings. And so we had to figure out our model at VIP of like, all right, how do we make it work where they can feature a VIP once a month and turn that full episode into clips? And I'm sure you know all that world.
Yeah.
And so turning the podcast into clips, which are shorts and reels, which is great because it dovetails wonderfully with what we do at Video Socials as clubs. And so that's another aspect of kind of recognizing that our clients are busy and that we have to learn really working with our clients of how do we make this useful for them, convenient for them, but fit it into their busy schedule as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then as you kind of, look forward and, we've touched a little bit like what the future could hold and how things are changing, sort of how do you see your business either transforming or really looking at content creation going forward in terms of like the platforms and groups you've created, the integration of AI in maybe a different way? How are you kind of looking at that?
I guess there's two ways, Jenna, right? There's the 5 to 10 years from now of when will avatars be socially acceptable? Where I remember at Phone Blogger, when Phone Blogger started, blogging was seen as a novelty and maybe even strange. And then now it's kind of ho-hum and expected. And, to the point where if you don't have a blog, it's got almost seen as strange. Now it's a reversal. And same thing with video, right? That it used to be, oh, look at you. You've got videos on your website. It's like very impressive. And now it's ho-hum, and now it's expected and again strange that when you don't have any video or at least anything, like you're not on YouTube at all, you have no videos. It's like, is that why? I think the same thing will happen in the world of kind of have that digital twin avatar perspective where in the beginning, it'll be very awkward and strange and novel in a good way. I think it will be socially acceptable and expected that instead of this clunky chat bot thing that we're doing in the bottom right of all the websites of like, all right, is that a real person? Is that AI? Same thing when we, call, big companies and we're just trying to yell for the representative. That gets really annoying. I think a digital twin and AI base will inevitably take over, and that's okay for everyday interaction. So I wonder if our company will go in that direction of creating personalized avatars. That makes sense that we would be there. However, in the short term, we're more focused on how do we make this more relationship focused and less about the content. And so, be it video blogs, well, is it really helping you connect with your audience as potential clients and referral relationships and colleagues and raving fans? And the more interactive we can make the content, the more interactive we can make the relationship, the better. For me, technology, the means to that end of human connection. And so for us, it's that community, not only among our own members, but then within their circle of influence as well. How are they using content and their own expertise to connect with others? And we haven't cracked that code yet, but we've got things, in the pipeline that we'll probably, announce soon enough. But, I don't think, I'm not perfect at it, but I know for me, my passion is much more when our members, I was going to say my humans, when our members of actually connecting with each other, that makes me feel way better than the fact that, oh, they were able to push a button and get their video posted on YouTube or have it automatically reposted on LinkedIn, which is a feature of Brander that's coming soon. Yeah, those things we have to work on, but it's much more, all right, that they were able to actually engage real people, and it's not just about the metrics, it's about the real people.
And I'm curious, from either your kind of mastermind style groups and or maybe just like one-to-one basis when you're working with clients, do you feel like that's something that's kind of at the forefront in terms of their thought from like an AI perspective is a topic of conversation? Because legal, finance, obviously like tons of disruption just from like a workflow and process perspective, a compliance perspective, and a lot of it being faster, simpler, less manual or less, onerous on their time from like a doc review perspective. But I'm curious too, because they're going down this route with you of being educator and, marketing themselves out there, if they're feeling challenged in any kind of way by the disruption.
I don't think I've actually asked in terms of their operational, so it's a good question. I can probably find that out. My gut instinct is that yes, because I'm involved in a lot of bar association conferences, et cetera, and that AI in operations, from client intake to actual doc review to trial prep, all that is being impacted by AI and related technologies. So I can imagine that it's challenging for some of our clients who are my age or older, where this isn't a kind of a normal part of their life. And so I could appreciate that it's challenging, even for them, as much as they can use AI and related technologies for efficiency. So long as they're more client-centric, the way we want to be more member-centric and relationship-driven, I think that tends to probably be even more powerful. Though from a cost reduction standpoint, AI can work tremendously from an operation. So yeah, I wonder. I don't get too much involved in the day-to-day operations, our clients. And so from that perspective, I can't really speak to how it is. But yeah, it is definitely, I think, in general, a more positive force than negative. So I tend to lean on, at least in the short term, I don't think there's going to be a robot uprising in my generation. For us, it's going to be okay. The more we can use AI and automation and machine learning, I think the better, because it gives us, hopefully, gives us more time and attention to those, that things that matter, that, between us as people.
I agree. It's a great opportunity to kind of create more space to do things that fulfill you in a more meaningful way. And then in terms of, kind of emerging storytellers, their needs, or when someone's kind of very green to, the world we're speaking about, sort of, what are the tools and I guess your approach to kind of honor, their voice and their craft? Sort of how do you kind of customize working with them to create that uniqueness so that there is that standout for them?
It's a Venn diagram, right? It's their own personality and passion I've talked about, right? But also kind of the frustrations and the feelings of their clients or potential clients. The more that they can make that connection happen, that interlocking of those two circles, their personality and their clients' feelings, I think that's really where the narrative and the storytelling happens, where they can really share, if it's not their own story of how they've overcome challenges, but how they help their other clients overcome challenges, that really speak to what their next client is going to go through in a positive way. That is like, look, you're going through this now. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Let me show you what I've done with our other clients. And so from that perspective, I think it'd be helpful. Technology plays a great efficiency role because now we can do it by video. Literally, clients don't have to meet each other in person anymore. And so I think that can be extremely powerful. And then, all the other technologies that we talk about can go into it. Creating an automation in terms of follow-up and follow-through so that there's more accessibility, I think that's great too. And, my company is there as well. But again, it's, marrying the two, I think works really well. The more we can stay focused on what are our clients going through in terms of their frustrations and feelings, the more our storytelling can be that much more effective. And that can happen in short 2 to 3 segments, which is kind of great because that's what we do at Video Socials. It's what attention spans tend to be. It's what YouTube Shorts length is. So it all kind of fits together to be 2 to 3 minutes in sound bites.
Yeah, and I'm curious, as you are, building out different ways to help support kind of ease of like accessing platforms or posting different social media, either are you thinking about this or are you thinking the tools coming out and sort of, their role in expanding, representation and equity in media? It's an interesting topic that kind of, I always look about from a marketing perspective, and the voices that get amplified or like hacked kind of behind the things. I'm just curious, how you sort of like look at that and being able to sort of, I'll call it equalize, voices in a way to get, I think, voices not necessarily always heard in a different way.
As much as there's a backlash against DEI and things of that nature, I think Pandora's box has been opened. You have platforms like YouTube that are accessible. Now, there are issues from an algorithm standpoint and things of that nature of whether or not voices that are on the fringes, can they really get heard? But, if you're looking to seek an alternate perspective out and seeking a second opinion, even from a legal or medical or financial perspective, you can find it. And it gives us as content creators, a path forward. And even if it's not literally YouTube, it could be other platforms. And so I think from a democratization standpoint of really allowing us who are, smaller companies, smaller brands, smaller voices to access a larger audience, I think that's here to stay. I mean, it would take a lot to really stifle that. And so from that perspective, I think it can be tremendous. So from an equalizing force, I think the cat's out of the bag or Pandora's box has been opened. All those metaphors are there. And so I think that's extremely powerful. I mean, even in a practical sense, as smaller companies, it's kind of enabled us to have our own communities and footprints and really know that. And something else I tell my clients that you don't have to worry about being the top 1% podcast or getting 1 million followers or, tens of thousands of followers. That literally, if it's a double digit, small triple digit in terms of views, that's okay, because that's like you doing a seminar to 100 people.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Like, good for you. If you could do that week in, week out, that's a tremendous momentum that you could build a whole practice, a whole firm on. And so it's amazing how, every day it happens where there are international superstars that I've never heard of that have millions of followers I've never heard of. There are huge business celebrities that the everyday person has never heard of. And so there are all sorts of micro communities that aren't that small or can be very small. And so it's less about how can I make that impact on that broader scale and focus in on kind of those and how you can make an impact on those. And if when every one person leads you to one more person, you get that kind of doubling a penny every day phenomenon. And that is a lot more doable for us as everyday people. And literally by that 15th day, so to speak, doubling a penny, it's a monumental fortune. And so focus in on how can every one of your referral relationships lead you to one more referral? How can every one of your clients lead you to one more client? And as you're really honoring that strategy, well, that'll take you way further than trying to be, top of Google or top of the current version of Yellow Pages and getting strangers to like you and comment you. But that's a whole different type of strategy and a long-term strategy where they're not monetizing in the short term. But from a short-term perspective, very profitable perspective is be client-centric and be referral-centric.
No, I love that. You kind of already answered my next question, so I'm going to change it. What do you think, whether it comes up, again, with the people who you're working with, or maybe, kind of the noise you hear on the outside that you kind of are aware of and sort of change the way that you communicate? Sort of what are the biggest, I think, misconceptions, about content marketing videos that you either kind of are going always communicating up against, or that maybe like there's a myth that you want to like debust right now about it?
So there's an old movie called Field of Dreams from the 80s. And a very famous line from it: if you build it, they will come. And I go, look, that could work for ghosts in baseball movies. But just because you build a podcast, just because you put up a video blog, doesn't mean that they'll necessarily come out of the woodwork and let alone watch and listen or even become a client. And so there has to be a better method to the madness. And so I always say, look, the low-hanging fruit is your own circle of influence, and turning those folks that you already know and who know, like, and trust you, turn them into raving fans.
Yeah.
And really attend to what they're feeling and frustrated over. And then you have the secondary, maybe even juicier fruit of your guests. I'm looking forward to sharing this episode and corresponding clips and things of that nature. And the same thing can happen for anyone watching and listening, where you can create content that are other-centric. And the more it's focused on others, they'll want to share it, especially when they have aha moments, something that they've never thought about before, a realization, or so you're reminding people of something that they've already known but kind of need to dust off and actually take action on.
Yeah.
So either it's a realization or a reminder. If we can build in those aha moments in anything that we create as content, well, now you're making that connection. Now you're giving someone else an aha moment.
Yeah.
Want to share to someone else. And so that sharing aspect becomes really powerful. So I think that's the greatest myth, that just because you put up a website or put up a piece of content, A, is not enough, and B, why would it be enough? Like, you would want to help people in a better way.
And also, if it did work and you could just do that, I feel like, a lot more people would just be sitting there waiting for everything to happen to them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why would you even think that would be the case? But, but people aren't studying this on a day-to-day basis. I don't blame them. So it's like, yeah, they think, like, yeah, why, I should just put up a YouTube video. I'm like, yeah, you should, but not necessarily for the SEO algorithms to immediately promote you. Like, that's not going to happen. But yes, you should be out there. You should jump into the pool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I kind of want to transition to some rapid fire questions to sort of kind of close our time out. What is your favorite tool or hack when you're kind of stuck creatively?
I would say going to the gym is probably, in a general sense, get your mind off of it, or get my mind off of whatever's frustrating. And, I know it's there in the back of my mind. I just need that inspiration, so to speak. And so I will purposely shift gears and not think about it. And kind of allow that flow state and spark and all those kind of things to happen. I'm not very zen to meditate. I'm too antsy for that. Go to the gym and work out and kind of, allow my creative juices to go that way. And just kind of open my mind that way, and kind of allow, I'm not extremely spiritual to say, there's divine intervention, but perhaps it is. But really allow my brain to work in a different way and not get too wrapped up in kind of, monkey paw it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm a big fan of like just go do something else that has nothing to do with whatever you're staring at that's driving you nuts at the moment. What's your go-to content format today? Short video, blog, or voice note?
It depends on where I am. So if I'm eating by myself, it's going to be a YouTube podcast generally. It's going to be around either business or fitness or history, those kind of the things or even my own clients, I'll watch their podcasts. So, it also helps being client centric, but it's also, I get to learn a thing or two as well. So it's entertaining in that sense for me. So it's a lot of that. But when I'm walking about, I'm here in New York City, so I'm on a subway a lot and bus and walking. I generally listen to audiobooks. There's a great app called Libby, which attaches itself to the public library system here in New York. I don't know if it works in other places.
Yeah.
So I listen to a lot of audiobooks generally because I like to watch podcasts. I like to watch people.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to just listen, it's going to be some other narrator. Sometimes it's read by the author, but very often it's a narrator, and it'll be an audiobook that'll keep me engaged.
Yeah. And I had the biggest myth, that you and about marketing and digital communications, but maybe was such like a surprising fact or maybe something that people won't know that works really well.
People like to know who they're working with. Like in the beginning, they want to know a very transactional, utilitarian, can you help me fix my problem? Do you have that expertise? Have you fixed it before for others? That kind of very utilitarian, transactional, timely topics, things of that nature. But as they're making that decision to work with you as a professional, where you're not just a vendor, but you're a counselor, you're an advisor, and my clients have that relationship with their clients. That know, like, and trust becomes really important. And so what's surprising is that, some of those kind of opening questions of childhood or hobbies and things like that really endear us to each other. And really finding that common ground, even if it's not something I'm into. Like, I'm not really into that sports, or I'm not into sports, in general anyway. But, it's like, all right, the fact that I know that you're passionate about something, it gets me to know who you are, to know that you also have a crazy family life with kids, drama, and all that stuff. I can relate to you as an actual person. I can get you on the phone, that it's not dealing with an AI bot. It's surprising that I think the more things change, the more things stay the same. And I think that will remain true, at least for the next generation. We'll see what happens after Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha, they're that's what my kids and they're very proud to be. They don't really know of an era before AI, so they use AI in school now, and they're being trained to use it as an education learning tool. At least my kid's school does, and so I think that's good. I'm happy for that, because it's kind of like, you should know how to use a calculator, and now you should know how to use AI. Like, it doesn't mean that you don't know what that math is behind the calculator, but AI can do a lot of things that why have our brain do that? Our brain could do other more creative and more human things. My perspective. So from that perspective, nonetheless, I think, again, it's the human connection, and the more we can focus on that, the better.
I love that. And then maybe what's a moment, where kind of technology made your storytelling magic happen?
When I realized how easy it was just to use Zoom even and record a video, and where I could just talk, it brought Phone Blogger to life. And I use Phone Blogger as a client, and then I was like, oh, this is even easier. I can use my hands. I talk with my hands a lot. I'm sure you've noticed a lot of facial expressions and intonation. I talk fast. And so all of that can actually come through a lot better, where a picture's worth 1,000 words and video is like 1,000,000 words. And so that all that passion and personality can come through a lot easier on video than it can in the written form. And it takes a lot of creativity to make the written form, to really express that emotion. Can we even do it in a professional setting where you can't really use a lot of bold and italics and emoji in professional writing? But you can figuratively do that with video. And so when that started happening, again, this was, before COVID,
Yeah.
that really opened up my eyes. I said, look, we got to be able to do this for our clients. So not only for my own storytelling, but
Yeah.
also for our clients.
I love it. And last and final question, in your own words, define what built for this means to you.
Who is it built for? Are you built for it? Is it done consciously? I think built for this, yes, truly can be. Are you strong enough for it? But you don't necessarily have to be too strong for it. That I think built for this can be purpose driven. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? As long as we're conscious for that, then we can see maybe we're not built for it, and that's okay. We're built for something else. So everyone's built for something good. So go to it.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate you taking time. It was so great to kind of connect in and learn how you approach things. And then for anybody listening that, really connected with the way that you work with clients, kind of your approach and storytelling and marketing, what is the best way to connect in with you to learn more about your services and how they could work with you?
They can go to VideoSocials.net as a website. The bottom right corner, it is part of this chat box, not a bot. It comes to my cell phone. Mine's on vibrate right now, so it doesn't bother me during these kinds of things. But generally speaking, I love talking to people who stumble upon the website because of these kind of podcasts or blogs that I do. And the greatest part of that is really for them to come and be part of our community, even as a guest, to kind of watch what happens and how our members interact and create video blogs together, fun and done. Our guests are not required to record a video the very first time they come to Video Socials, but the second time they are required, because then it's that, you can't be a bump on a lock. The very first time, that's okay, you're off the hook. Second time, some strands, and even if it's just talking about your own why of why you do what you do, that can be an opening video. But, jump into the pool, splash around with us, you get your nerves out. You don't have to use the video publicly, but, start doing it. For those members or pardon those guests who do record a video, they can then use our automation software, Brander, and get it optimized and get it out there. And that's a great way of experiencing Video Socials from the inside out. First up, let's have a conversation. This way I can kind of prep potential guests on what to expect literally in a Video Socials community and go from there.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, and I look forward to staying connected.
Likewise, Jenna. Thank you for the opportunity.